Okay, so we're now shuffling the cards, and what we're going to do, I want you to concentrate on this question, which Lynn and I were just discussing, which is, how does one go about as a beginner learning the tarot? And that's the question we're going to pose the Celtic cross. Okay? So are you happy that they're shuffled with that question in mind?
Okay.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to lay them out facing this direction here. So the cards are going to be facing that way. So this is the situation itself. Then the next card. Good. And then how have you decided to lay out the cards around? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Okay, so that's axle and wheel. Yeah. And then 4 cards running up the side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Brilliant. Okay, and then the base card, if you just turn that there so we can see it. And it's the hangman, so everyone always puts that the right way up.
Okay. And they go.
And
It's okay.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we have this particular reading, and I'll put a photograph of this when we do this as the video lesson to superimpose over this. What we do, or what one can choose to do, is look at it as a whole picture first of all. Now with different decks this works in very different ways, but with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck we can first of all think about colours. So first of all, is this a bright reading or a dark reading or somewhere in between?
Bright and starry.
Bright, yes.
Bright and starry, okay? So we start off just from that guessed out, that whole picture. And again, we don't start to go, oh, well, the first card is this, and the next card is this, and the next card is that, and so on. Just take a big step back, almost literally look back from it, and see what shapes you can see in it.
Is what he's doing there, really?
Yeah.
He's got a globe in his hand. Is that a globe in his hand?
It is.
So he's looking at the whole thing?
He's looking at the whole thing, okay? So already, the first thing we need to do when we learn tarot, and learn the Celtic cross, and learn as a beginner, is take a step back and look at the whole thing. Don't get drawn into any particular thing. Or if you do...
Or one thing or another.
Yeah, just notice it. Just notice...
Circles all over. Well.
Circles all over. Okay. What else? Where's your eye drawn? If this was a picture, just one picture, where would your attention be drawn? I know where mine's being drawn.
Money.
On the money. Where? Point. Right, so you can see what Tali did with her finger then. She actually just hovered it there.
Like
so there's some sort of fizzly pattern going on here. Okay?
Yeah, that's the first thing that drew my attention.
Right.
Although I forgot it, Pentacles. That is Pentacles, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is money?
Coins, discs.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah.
Okay.
My attention goes here, into this circle, which feels like a hole that everything else is being drawn into.
I can get that too.
Now,
So it's like a vortex.
A vortex heading into here. Now, this is what people call intuition. I don't know why my attention is doing that yet, but I do know it is doing it. And to recognise that without knowing why you recognise it is what's called intuition. And people get very het up about intuitive readings and non-intuitive readings and so on. You can only intuit something that you already know about.
How do you mean?
in that an astrologer can intuit what a particular pattern in a chart might mean without knowing it. If you go into surgery and look into someone's open heart, you will not be able to, no matter how good your so-called intuition is, know which valve needs fixing.
Gotcha.
Whereas a surgeon will intuit that.
Right.
And people misunderstand the word dramatically. They think it's somehow psychic or...
I know, it's just... absolutely.
Right.
Now,
Knowledge.
inspiration, however, is a different thing. Inspiration is when you get something like you look at the heart and you go, there, fix that valve. And there's no way you could possibly know that.
Yeah, so it's
Now
inspired guess.
that's
kind of thing,
inspiration.
Yeah.
Literally, it means to be inspired, to be breathed by the gods.
Yeah. Whereas intuition is in knowing.
Is a very fundamental thing, and it can be taught. And this is what we're doing here. We're learning intuition. So, and both in and intuition and inspire both involve in.
In.
And it's a breathing in, literally inspire.
To actually bring to life. And
Yeah. And you breathe in, so you literally go, and you pull back. So if you'd like to do that now, just pull back from it and see what happens. See, again, my attention just goes straight into here for some reason.
It's interesting because I always think intuition is the first thing that gets you, and then you go, now to think about that,
Yeah.
and you lose it. Because that was the first thing I saw.
Yeah.
Then I went further going,
Oh, yeah.
and like Charlie did with that one,
Yeah.
and it's because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
They're kind of graphically obvious, you might say. Yeah.
And because our intuition works with our knowledge, which is more conscious, and our attention, they're always working together in tandem. But the thing to do with tarot reading, I find, is to breathe in and breathe out. And when you're breathing in, literally sit back a little and look, and then breathe out and go, so my attention is being brought here now. I know about the moon card is reflective, blah, 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 blah. And then you can work up and down those 4 levels we talked about as well. But that's for more intermediate stuff.
Isn't it though, because you've got the sun and the moon here, haven't you?
Yes, it's
So
actually
sort of
in...
male and female.
So
I can't understand, it's the moon,
We'll call the moon,
which is
feminine.
female, feminine, but you've got this... Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that in specifics in a moment. So can we understand what we're seeing in terms of the big picture first?
Yes.
Okay, now to get a little bit more background on that, one other thing that we're going to do as well is do it more rationalistically in terms of a rule base. So first of all, we have 10 cards out of 78. On average, you should get about 1.2 of every court card.
Right.
Or every minor card, sorry. And 1 or 2 of the majors.
Say it again.
So statistically, you should have a couple of each of the suits, so 2 pentacles, 2 wands, 2 cups, and 1 and a little bit, so 1 or 2 of the major cards.
Major arcana, yeah.
Yeah. So
The atu, as it called.
the atu, or the keys. So one of the things that we need to do is just look at the overall spread of cards. So are there lots of court cards, first of all?
There's 3.
Yeah.
So what was the proportion of court cards?
Sorry, major cards.
Maybe, well, yeah, I know there's a kind of 3 of them,
1 or
wasn't
2.
it? 3.
So we've got 3. So that's maybe a little over the average. Then look at suits. Okay. Are there lots of pentacles?
Well, it seems that way.
Yes, lots of them.
Does seem that way.
But looking at it properly, they are actually in the majority, aren't they?
The cups are here and here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
probably quite well
3 of
balanced.
cups, so 3 cups and 3 pentacles.
Yeah. So that's quite balanced. But what are we missing?
Missing the there's one was what's the other one? Swords.
Swords.
Yeah.
We have no swords in this reading.
So yeah, so
Right.
So what would that tell you?
It's lacking force.
It's lacking force.
Oh, don't get caught out with duality. Leave duality out of the picture.
Okay, so don't get caught out. Oh, because of course we've forgotten the question while we're doing this, aren't we?
Right.
Okay, you have it. So
so how a beginner.
how a beginner would read. Okay, so don't get caught into knowing too much and having a fixed, you know, it's got to be this or that.
Quite, exactly.
And
which is what I thought how these two ones were. There's this and there's that.
yeah, but he's actually stood between them.
Yeah, and looking at the whole.
Yeah.
Looking at the whole, whereas the two of swords shows a woman with two crossed swords because she's now in a dilemma. She has to choose. She can't be in the middle. And so the weight of it actually puts strain on the situation. Okay, that's good. So do we understand that we're now looking still at the big picture?
Yeah.
We've not read a single card yet.
I find this one very interesting because that one I said was because looking at the whole and having not been distracted by kind of dualism.
Okay.
Even though the swords are mainly about dualism, aren't they?
And intellect.
And
knowledge
yeah.
and knowledge-based
Yeah,
rules.
yeah.
So we're coming up with the idea not to be constrained by knowledge-based rules, by a knowledge-based rule,
Right, yeah.
which is nice.
Because we know nothing.
Yeah, and the card's paradoxical. Now, sorry, Tom.
And of course the numbers, of course.
Right, let's look at the numbers
they're
then.
very sort of quite high, aren't
Yeah, let's run the numbers, folks.
Okay.
Run the numbers.
Run the numbers. So if there's loads of low numbers like aces, twos, threes, fours, then the situation is developing at the beginning.
Yeah.
If it's later numbers, then it's quite established.
There's two twos, I
That
noticed.
is,
So we
it's
might.
quite balanced again, isn't it?
It's reasonably balanced. We've got some beginning development cards and then some sort of final cards, the 10 and the 9 here. So we might want to look at those as a pair.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're pairs anyway.
Yeah.
A pair of wands and a pair of pentacles.
Yeah. So what would that suggest? Even before we've started our reading, really.
Looking at things in two ways.
Looking at things in two ways, both practically and in a grounded sort of sense, and also with our values in place and looking at the big picture. But not getting bound intellectually and not getting bound emotionally.
It's quite sort of interesting little tightrope there.
Yeah, yeah. So the beginner is always on a tarot tightrope.
And juggling things.
And juggling
Yeah.
things, yes. Yeah, exactly. Which comes back to our little acrobat here.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing in my head because I do a thing is readings
Never
for a
rests,
living.
does he?
Never rests. Interesting. Okay.
The readings for a living thing just came to me. You see, when a person's paying you money for a reading, that was struck me as like, am I going to give this person value for their money?
Ah, interesting.
So I'm juggling what I feel, what I'm getting intuitively, right, as against what I feel that they're prepared to pay money for. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Often people, intuition is about the truth, really, isn't it? So often people don't quite want the untarnished truth. They just want something to comfort them or something, which is going to make them feel like, right, that was worth my 20 quid or whatever, you know. And that's what that one was saying to me. Yeah, just a sort of an aside there. Funny thing.
Yeah, I know one of the students on one of my courses said who was a counsellor, and we were asking what do people want from their reading. And we went around the table and people were saying they want knowledge, they want truth, they want this, that and the other. And she said, permission.
Permission.
Really?
Often a person, that's what they want from the reading.
Yeah, absolutely.
Permission.
Absolutely.
And that's the only thing you can't give them.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the only things you can't give them. Okay, so...
I tend to disagree with that.
I'd say it's hope.
Yeah, because I just had a client came to mind who was trying to leave her husband, and she just totally... And because I, in so many words, permitted her to do so that she is permitted to do that. This is in her birthright, kind of thing.
Okay.
To do what she wants to do.
So you pointed out the possibility that she could do it.
It was pointing out that it's kind of rose to freedom kind of thing.
Okay.
You know, the freedom road was opening to her.
Yeah.
And to miss the opportunity to take the freedom road would not be a good idea. That amounted to permitting it, you might say.
Permitting,
Yeah.
okay. That'll be a good one for the forum when people watch this video. Okay, that discussion. So, let's take a look at actually doing the reading then. So we've looked at shapes and colours, and people then want loads of rules for... So if there's loads of straight lines over here and loads of curves over here, what does that mean? Well, one... can make one's own decisions about that depending on the rest of the reading. What I'd like to do is just show some pairings of cards and how I actually go about doing this particular reading. So I look at this arrow first of all.
Right.
And again, because people get so tied into this being Celtic and the cross and everything else, that they don't see some of the other shapes that might be in it. So this arrow shape here, I see as being drawn from a bow. And that these are the resources.
Right.
So rather than what's beneath them, this is resources. And this is not what's above, but aim.
Right.
That might be the outcome, but in order to get to that outcome,
You could have an aim, yeah.
you've got to have a clear aim and the resources have got to be pointed towards it, or this dynamic always has to be in place one way or another. So I tend to just quickly look at those two to say, what resources does one need to draw on and what should one aim to be doing?
Could that be a liken to kind of root and flower?
Root and flower?
Root and fruit, to put it more.
Root and fruit,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So here, with our question then, and quite often I'll then pair a few of the others, but let's just take this one at a time. So what are we seeing here then? If those are the resources and that's the aim, going through...
Plenty of room. Nine of Cups is so in the context of the question we're asking the tarot, it's like saying, at least in the present company, there's a lot to draw from. There's a lot of wealth to draw from.
Okay, and it's what sort of wealth?
Well, it's interior wealth, it says, but
It's also emotional, isn't it?
Yeah. So
oh, it's not comprehensive, it's just cups.
So
Isn't
it's
it?
cups,
Sorry,
yeah. Yeah.
You know, I want to mix those two up, which is an interesting.
So
It's the golden.
You warm enough for it, I think Edith cut off.
Has it?
You have.
Just pull that.
okay,
Sorry about
that's okay. I'll just talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
So this card is one where someone has that emotional wealth.
Well,
It's probably come about by experience and good decisions in the past. He looks content. He looks somewhat smug, you might say.
yes.
So it's perhaps suggesting in this reading that one can draw on that inner smugness,
Yeah.
one's emotional experience within a reading itself.
It smells with a negative word, doesn't it?
It is a negative word. So what might we say as that card?
So I'm messing things up a little.
No, that's no problem at all.
Yeah.
Satisfied, I think.
A satisfaction.
Yes, that's right. Happy within himself.
Yeah.
He's looking like he's had quite a good few dinners.
A good few dinners.
Sustenance has been
Yeah. So sustaining.
sustaining.
Yeah. Well, all of those meanings relate to this card. Okay, and one can then go away and learn lots of other keywords and lots of other meanings that all attract themselves to that particular image and symbol.
Yeah.
And also the basic structure underneath, even if we strip that card, that picture out, it's a 9, which is right towards the end, almost at the end of the sequence.
Yeah.
And Cups, emotional, it is that time of contentment,
Yeah.
not completion.
I'm getting a word here, because I'm just, again, looking at the question again,
Yeah.
is goodwill.
Goodwill, yeah.
It's a comfortable goodwill, because he's comfortable with himself,
Yeah.
he's got plenty to spare.
Benefactor.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beneficial.
Yeah.
Benefaction. Yeah.
Benefaction. So
Good place to come from.
a beginner should learn
To source their goodwill, their ability to benefit a person.
Yeah.
To benefit.
Be generous.
whilst aiming towards a rather more material.
Giving value for money, as I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, value for money.
Yeah.
But that's not just in wealth in terms of, just cash, coins, money.
Not actually short change a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to realise that this has a physical result. That if a person makes a decision based on a tarot reading, it's going to change the way they juggle their real world
Yeah.
and everything in it. It should do, otherwise why bother doing the tarot
Yeah.
reading? So one should aim to balance off and be aware of the material impact in the real world whilst sourcing on one's
On
Yeah,
the
because this is it's very interesting.
gift to the world.
Absolutely, exactly. You know, it's crossing a palm and silver, but
Yeah.
in the end, you're giving them everything, rather a lot.
Yeah.
And never forget
Emotionally.
that. Yeah, emotionally, that you are. Yeah, it's that goodwill and generosity.
And we're sourcing that through that dynamic goes through this card, which is the actual situation of seeing the big picture and bringing it into the world, whilst being challenged then. And this is the thing that makes this happen, and will inevitably arise from attempting this in the world, which is the 7 of
Pentacles, which to me is, because you're thinking a bit kind of, how there's 1 and the 6, isn't there? But there's
It's
one.
actually growing, isn't it? It's actually almost like it's growing on a bush, or because of money.
But how does it? What does he do? What's the expression on his face? He looks a bit sort of slightly querulous.
He's coveting a weeny bit.
coveting. So the problem is that as you start to develop your tarot skill and realise that it does have impact in the world,
Yeah. You might let it go to your head a weeny bit.
possibly, and also never be
egotistical.
satisfied that you are not absolutely spot on with every single reading. There's always an air of dissatisfaction.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. That
Incompleteness.
you don't give value
And
for money.
7 again, it's not quite.
It's not quite this, it's not quite
Yeah.
that, and so on. And that's inevitable. That will always arise from that sort of situation, from that dynamic. I'm not saying it's an inevitable consequence, but nonetheless, just in terms of doing the reading, though, looking at this thread, can one see how we've got this arrow?
For sure, yeah. Because
Okay.
there's a kind of continuum there.
Yeah.
Right.
And the more you draw on that, and the more clearer this is, and when you do a reading for somebody, this is what they need to draw on as their resources. And sometimes it can be inside them, sometimes it can be very much outside them, depending on the card. You know, it's where they need to look for help, either inside or outside. And this is where they should clarify their aim towards, to make it nice and smooth and keep this wheel running.
It's all very subjective to get there, isn't it? Because I'm reading it how I would feel, because I'd feel like, well, I'm only worth that, and they got all that. That's how I'm seeing. The expression on the guy's face is like, well, this is all I've got, but they got all that. It's like, you know, like in my experience, like, you know, you get a person coming to you, with money worries, and they got far more money than you have, and they're paying you, you know, quite a little, relatively. And so, you know, pentacles are pentacles, aren't they? I mean,
It'll be interesting to see other people's reactions to this particular spread as a beginner and as an experienced tarot reader. Just for the moment, though, let's just concentrate on the actual shape of the spread and so forth, rather than each individual card. So, looking back, as this is our road, and this is the wheel that's running down it, this is like the engine, and this is the navigation. That's actually moving it forwards. And again, it gets out of this idea that this is actually a Celtic cross. It's neither Celtic nor ancient nor a cross. Now, let's have a look at the tread of the wheel then, which is what's going around here. This is our recent past, so this is how worn the tread is, and this is what's gripping. This is the near future. Usually, and I think it's more an economical decision, this reading covers 3 months. Because a tarot reader doesn't want the person to come back in a week, so that would be a bit silly each week. They don't want them to come back every 4 years, so it tends to be roughly around 3 months. Now, I still don't know historically where that rule or idea has come from, but it is commonly accepted. It's about 3 to 6 months. So, this is what's past and this is what's future. I always, again, compare these two to say, what's the difference between them?
well, one's just an ordinary. What do you call them?
A minor.
A minor, and this is a major.
Yeah, or numbered and major.
Yeah.
So minor and major.
Mm.
This one is right at the end of the sequence, and this one is almost at the end of the major sequence. So the moon. Often people read the minor cards as being something in your control and down to earth, and these as being, fundamental archetypal forces. I always look at them as this is where you can steer your canoe a little bit with your paddle, and this is where the waters are quite running fast, and it's best to work out where to put your energy.
Where the elements have got you.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. So they're moving away from a very finished situation in the material world to something slightly more mysterious and unknown.
So, in terms of the question, it's like moving from a kind of a set idea of how it was. Like kind of you were in the second division, and now you're moving into the first.
Exactly.
From top of the second, but then this is like, as you say, it's quite a way through into the major arcana anyway.
And also, as one of my teachers once said, the crayfish never gets out of the water.
The crayfish never gets out of the water.
It's always
the crayfish never makes it to the plate, doesn't it?
the crayfish never makes it to the plate. One of the older Renaissance pictures actually has a big silver plate with the crayfish actually, unfortunately, already on it.
Oh dear.
Wish fulfillment.
So here we're seeing right at the end of the entire sequence of the 40 minor cards, as you lay them out in the 4 worlds, for example, this is the very most material, last fixed card. So that's in your past as a tarot reader, the known world, with all of its families and boundaries and...
Terosophy Towers there. Though.
Yes. You enter into Terosophy Towers. Between the 2 towers, and then there is a pale moonlit path stretching ahead of you, of the unknown, of reflection, of dreams, illusions.
The tarot world.
The tarot world. Okay. But can we see how we paired those 2 cards?
Well, there's a great contrast, really. That's what I would see. That was terribly known and established. The 10 of Pentacles, and very much kind of like it's a sort of marketplace. It's like where it's all kind of coming together in that kind of way. Commerce but it is going from the commercial to the inspirational.
Yes. Yeah. So we can see how we paired those 2 cards. Paired those 2 cards. Paired these 2 cards.
Gotcha.
Okay, and that makes this wheel. So the better the dynamic between those, and the invisible card, which would be, keeping the big picture and keeping everything sort of under control. That sort of dynamic. Fixers. This keeps the direction going, keeps the engine running.
This is what this is called aim is saying in a way. Although it's pentacles, it's saying look at the pairs, as you say, and keep them rotating.
And then this is the tread that grips you. Where you've been and where you're going to. Okay. Then what we can do is pair the cards down this side.
Hang on a second.
Sure.
Where you've been and where you're going to, as opposed to where you come from and where you're headed. It's a different kind of... My brain is a little kind of squeaky on that.
Okay. If you imagine this as the current situation... Oops.
Yeah.
And this is the past situation. So this is your storyboard. How other people might see it if they were looking at you from the outside.
Right. That's going to... That's more like how this is the road and this is the vehicle, but I'm seeing like that's the road and that's the vehicle. I'm getting confused.
Okay. Place your metaphor templates on it as is helpful to you. Okay. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah. Okay, but I need to get it firmly in my mind though.
Okay.
I go with that because again, it's been as far as I can relate this to sort of houses and things.
Okay.
But it's like See, I remember you said earlier on that this is the road it's on, and now I think about this was like the road, like it's going from, you know, the money marketplace and the nth degree of all that, and almost saturation point. But then, it's, as Charlie was saying, it's into the, you know, into the unknown.
Yeah.
And which is a vast difference. So tarot reading will take you from one place to another, and you better be you know, alive to that. But in order to go with that flow, you've got to have that kind of bearing. A bearing. I'm drawing from these resources, and I'm aiming in terms of, again, like I'm saying, that was it's like value for money. So yeah, I think I got it. Yeah.
Okay. So over here, then, I tend to pair these two cards, and I usually say, this is how you see yourself, and this is how other people see you.
Right.
Okay, so
that's how you see yourself and I see you.
Quite often,
very true. That's right.
So quite often, this is what's going on within you, and this is like your what did the original instruction say? Your house.
Oh, yeah.
I.e. the people around you. Now, nowadays I tend to see this as like, you know, this is how your self-image and this is what others have projected onto you. And quite often the dynamic between these two really explains to the other person and to oneself, if you're doing the reading for oneself, how things are arising as they are. Because quite often, you know, you might see yourself as being very under control and everything else. Other people are seeing you as being manic and a loose cannon. Yeah. And then all of a sudden that explains why no one is actually helping you out the way you want them to, or why they are apparently miscommunicating with you. Yeah. Or why things are never as you think they should be, and so on and so on. So I love pairing these two cards because quite often out of them comes usually the aha moment for the other person comes in the invisible card between these two.
Gotcha.
Which is, so, as a tarot reader, this is how one sees oneself, the Page of Cups, as a beginner. And this is how other people see you.
Right, I don't know, Page, I just sort of being an apprentice, it's kind of youngest to the court cards, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
You know, and cups being, because it relates to this, your resources, and it's saying, and you're at the very beginning of using those resources.
Okay.
Yeah, that fair?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Because I think somebody actually said to me the other day, when I did that reading, they actually asked me if that one was the
Page of Cups.
Fool, yes,
they thought that was the Fool.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they said.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Is that not the Fool?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And I said, no,
okay.
no, it's
Yeah,
not.
I was.
So what's the key difference then between those two cards, other than that's a court card, that's cups, that's technically an unknown?
It's kind of obvious, really, because like doing the tarot for the first time, you're liable to look a fool.
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Wacky.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
Whereas you're seeing yourself as someone who's starting out, using your inner resources, emotional resources, in order to help people, in order to bestow something upon them. But you're just a beginner at it. But you are actually in touch with this essence.
Also, these two cards tend to be about individual freedom. So this is creativity often, and he doesn't look that surprised that a fish is jumping out of the cup or anything, because he's expecting it. He's drawing on those resources.
Yeah, like a rabbit out of a hat.
Yeah. Whereas the Fool is far more, in a sense, mysterious. People don't quite know what's going on with the Fool. There's a motley Fool. He may not even know that he's about to step off the cliff, but it doesn't matter.
Yes, of course, he doesn't even know he is one.
Yeah, but the thing is,
the Fool doesn't know.
No, but returning still to the thing how you see yourself and others see you, which I'm kind of clinging to, because seeing myself as just beginning, you know, as being an apprentice in bestowing my wealth of whatever it might be, my whatever I can give a person through the tarot reading, right?
Yep.
That's how I'm seeing that character,
Okay.
the Page of Cups. But how they will see me, I mean, the obvious kind of thing, with kind of uninformed, you might say, view of the Fool is just that, a fool. You know, the Fool. Whereas we know, we're looking a bit further, it's a lot more than that. And it's like...
perhaps as well, the dog barking at the heels here on the Fool, which is one of the traditional components of it. Quite often with his rear end, having had a hole bitten out of it.
Yes.
Perhaps other people see the tarot card reader as sort of nipping at their heels a little bit. So rather than being the Fool, actually the tarot reader is perceived as being the dog to their foolish journey. Anyhow, we can go into...
It's very tricky. I mean, it's subjective, objective thing, isn't it? Because it's like saying, well, am I subjectively interpreting how people objectively see me?
Exactly. But when you're doing it with another person, it's a very useful way of pairing.
Well, quite, because what the dynamic between the two cards, to me, is just like, well, I'm just beginning, and I'm possibly going to make a fool of myself. That's just
it is. It's so easy to make a fool of yourself doing this, actually.
And it's inevitable. I think
and the dog is then nipping at my heels.
I think we were saying yesterday that one of the problems with learning to read tarot cards is very much that it's not like other sports to some extent. The best way of learning and practicing is with other people, face to face, and there are too many sort of like endorsed readers who've never really actually read for another human being, and it's a bit like having to practice, what did we say yesterday, football, by playing league matches all of the time. Well, just in the sense that there isn't really a practice pitch. You can practice all you want by kicking a ball into a goal. And you get better at it. And then eventually you go on to a league match and you build up through the leagues and so on. Whereas tarot card reading, you can practice by yourself looking at the cards, but to do a tarot card reading is to do it for someone else.
Yeah, quite. It's the same playing music. I'll learn a song and play it on my own.
Yeah.
Then I'll play it in front of people. It all changes.
Exactly. Yeah. But with tarot card reading, the best way of learning is with other people.
For sure.
So you have to practice it and make a fool of yourself time and time again.
Yeah, by doing it.
Yeah, this was such a great, literally major card because it is to do with, they said, made a fool of time and again, or risking being made a fool of time and again, fearing being a fool of time and time again. You get to a point, and this is really kind of, you get to a point, and I've definitely kind of engaging with that point for quite a few years now, it doesn't happen overnight, put it that way, where this is such a tantalising thing, this is what I thought when this was laid down, this spread, I thought, Fool's there, I'm glad of that, because I regard the Fool, because I know it's Uranus governs divinatory arts, astrology, and I can't escape my astrological correspondence here.
No, of course.
And so because it's to do with that, it is to do with it about if you can defeat your fear of being looking a fool, then you break on through to the other side. Because it's a fear of getting it wrong that hampers you from getting it right.
Absolutely. You have to become the Fool. So let's just finish off here. So we pair those two together in much the same way we've paired these two, looked at those two, and so on. Then these two I do take sort of individually. This card is bad enough as it is in this spread. This position is bad enough.
Is it bad? What do you mean?
In the sense of it's quite confused.
Lots of fears.
Hopes and fears. Hopes and fears. And a lot of people would say, well, if it's a negative card, and also if you're doing reversals, if it's a negative card that's reversed and it's in a position of hopes and fears,
what does that mean? Yeah.
What the hell does that mean? So I've simplified it a little bit. This is concerns.
Right.
Now, a positive concern is what a lot of people call a hope, and a negative concern is what they call a fear. But neither are necessarily true. What I say for this reading is, whilst that is definitely your past, and this is likely your future and this is the outcome and everything else. This card is the position in this whole thing of things that concern you but are not happening.
That are not happening.
That are not happening.
Right, because hopes and fears haven't happened, that it's concerning.
Yeah.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's a so-called negative card, then it's something that concerns you negatively.
Is that something to do with kind of attitude in a way?
An attitude, yeah. Sort of like your position.
Your take on it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you can stand in terms of... the hope can return to hopes and fears, because I always like the hopes and fears label for this card, because hopes and fears are very... Everyone knows what hopes and fears are.
Yes. And quite often this is a card that actually helps liberate, towards the end of the reading, if you come sort of this way round the reading, this card is quite nice, because by the time you've talked about this, don't forget the attention of the person has been driven to what their issues are. Around here, just before you come to the outcome, it's quite neat to then say, having looked at all of that, and the person will be entering into the state of whether it's hopefulness or anxiety or whatever's to do with their question. You've spent like 35, 40 minutes, an hour talking about that. Their state will have changed. And then you can actually draw on this card and say, I understand that you may be very concerned about X, whatever this card is.
Yeah.
But that, unless it's showing in the rest of the reading, which is usually doesn't happen, this is only your concern, as we've seen from what we've been talking about in the rest of the reading, blah, blah, blah. And it's a very liberating card. It's sort of the penultimate card that just releases the state.
How, in terms of our question, then?
In terms of our question, then,
And then comes the card.
I think a major concern of a lot of beginner tarot readers is whether they can be this high priestess.
Yeah, quite, yeah.
This somehow intuitive, all-knowing, all-seeing oracle. She has the law, Torah, on the scroll.
Oh, yeah. And what does the B and J stand for?
Boaz and Yakim, the two pillars of the temple. She knows everything. She can reflect everything.
Right.
And the beginner tarot reader just feels that everyone's seeing them as this card.
Yes, actually, that was what I felt like.
Yeah. They've left behind the fixed world. They've entered into this weird unknown world full of mystery and symbols and laws, which we've said you need to take a big step back from and start to look at the bigger picture more often. Draw on your own emotional intelligence and keep things in check and in balance. So it's only a concern. And I think, like Lynn was saying earlier, you have to you have to learn to
Break on through to the other side.
break on through.
Yeah.
And the High Priestess is the final guardian. Actually, Crowley has a brilliant description of the High Priestess. When he talks about the light, the veil that he draws for that particular card, which is here. So, we put that card there.
There it is.
So we have all of the lunar symbols and the alchemical symbol that's actually hidden inside this card. There's a veil of light, like a mesh, and Crowley says something quite neat about it, if I can...
Yeah, sorry, there it is.
There we go. The card represents the most spiritual form of Isis, the eternal virgin, the Artemis of the Greeks. She is clothed only in the luminous veil of light. And then this wonderful sentence. It is important for high initiation to regard light not as the perfect manifestation of the eternal spirit, but rather as the veil which hides that spirit. So the danger is mistaking the light for the source of the light itself.
Yeah.
And this is the concern of most tarot readers at a very fundamental level. Supposing we're just making it up.
Quite.
Yes. And it's all just fanciful.
Supposing our inspiration is pretend. But at the end of the day, it is only a concern, because the question is, so what? Where does the pretending come from?
Yeah.
Yes.
The moon here, and the moon there, so that's right, and the two there, and the two there, and there. I'm just saying that's kind of linking in, you know what I mean?
And that's exactly what a good tarot reader does, and why I teach it first. Not this linear, what does this card mean? Let's do that for a week. What does this card mean? Let's do that for a week. And eventually, it trains the brain very badly and very poorly to become a tarot reader. And most books do it in that linear way. Every book I bought recently, even the latest books on tarot, you can guess, half of the book is a page-by-page description of each card in a linear sequence, one after another. Not often tying them together. That's why I like that Choice Centered Tarot book I gave you earlier, because it talks about the sequence. In Kabbalah, you're taught you cannot look at one of the Sephira by itself. You always have to look at the circles on the Tree of Life as pairs, as sets, as groups. You can only understand one in the context of another. And that's why it's good to learn tarot holistically first. So, this is our concern then. And in this case, it's both a positive and a negative.
Can we want to simply say that interpreting the negative aspect of the High Priestess is your fear, and interpreting the positive aspect is your hope?
Exactly. So we hope to become a High Priestess, or priest.
Clothed in light, but
Clothed
actually
in light.
Don't be deceived by it. Don't be blinded by that.
And we fear the deceit.
That's right, of being a charlatan.
Yeah.
Yeah, of being you're not the real thing.
Yeah. But the card in that position says it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant in the real situation itself. It may be not irrelevant in your experience because you do have it as a hope or a fear. But it's actually something that is neither here nor there.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Okay, we'll come back to further analysis of that. Okay? Yeah. Now, finally, we have the King of Cups, which is the outcome.
Yeah, well, it's obviously related to that.
And this one as well.
Yeah, of course.
So we then look at our three cups here, and we say, so you internally feel like yourself as very much the Page of Cups. You can grow up to be the King of Cups.
Yeah.
This is the final outcome if you keep this wheel down this track in exactly this sort of way, understand all of the lessons from this reading, is the outcome card.
Okay.
If you don't, then the outcome card is highly unlikely to manifest.
Yes.
Okay? So we've seen that we take a big step back, we look at the individual positions, but then we pair them, and we look at the balance of the suits, we look at the shapes, and we look at the cards that aren't there as well. Okay. So we'll perhaps come back in a bit and look at some more ways of reading it and do a couple of example spreads. But for now, that's it. Thank you.
Can I just... was it already talking?